Okay, welcome back to the Cafe Education stage here at the Melbourne International Coffee Expo. It's time for our next panel. We're going to be talking about the coffee value gap. So, as the cost of coffee continues to rise across the supply chain, a critical question emerges. What does the price of a cup truly reflect its value? And how does it? So the coffee value gap highlights the disconnect between what consumers pay and the real cost of production, from farmers to cafe operators. So in this discussion, we're going to explore where value is gained and lost, how to manage customer expectations, business sustainability, and what the industry can do to be a more transferable and equitable coffee economy. So to learn more, I'd love to welcome our 4 experienced industry experts representing the green bean roasting and cafe sector here today. So welcome to Abdullah Rami, CEO of Pablo and Rusty's Coffee Roasters, to Lissy Ward, Head of Operations and Sourcing at St. Ali Coffee Roasters, to Andre Selga, Co-founder and Director of Southland Merchants, and to Matt Gellert, CEO of Black and White Espresso. Welcome to each of you. Let's give them a round of applause, everybody. Thank you so much. All right, great topic to kick off this morning. So, Abdullah, I think we're going to start with you. I'd love you, obviously this is a huge topic, so maybe let's break it down for everyone just to start with. Please, if you can help us understand and define what is the coffee value gap here in terms of, in practical sense, what does it mean for our industry?
Thank you, Sarah, and it's great to be here. I've unfortunately become known as the coffee price man. And what is it? Let's define it. For me, if you look at an average coffee in Australia, it's probably as small as about $5.50, let's call it. Around the world, OECD countries, you're looking at about $9 at least, without taxes, without tips. So there's a $3 to $4 gap. And the reason it's important to call it a value gap is that if you call it a price gap, I think that's not communicating what it is. And we often talk about, this started 5-6 years ago, I think when a lot of us look at cafes, we realize there's a lot of focus on producers and farmers, and that's important, and they don't get paid nearly enough. But if cafes at the front of that value chain are doing it tough, and they are, then the value will not flow. All right? We won't value our people well. And then once we talk about the value gap and acknowledge it, then we can say, okay, what do we do? Is it about pricing? Is it about communicating our value? Is it about innovation? Is it about automation and so forth? So that's the value gap for me.
So we've discussed the gap, but why is it an issue?
Great question. If we have such a big gap of $3 or $4, the first question is, are we more efficient than the rest of the world? Are our cafes have lower expenses or something else? And the answer is, cafes 1 in 10 have closed in the last year. Profitability has gone down from over 3% to almost 2.4%, according to IBIS. And the problem is that if cafes and the people working in them are not sustainable, that means by proxy roasters are not sustainable, and then the farmers are not sustainable.
Yes.
So it's a huge issue. I actually think it's an existential problem that we have to talk about. Now, the solution might not be as simple as just raising our price to $1.09. But if we don't talk about it, if we don't address it, it should bother all of us that as Australians, and Kiwis, with one of the best coffee cultures in the world, one of the best cafes in the world, it should really bother us that it's $3 to $4 cheaper. And the cafes 1 in 10 are closing. This is a problem.
It is a problem. Absolutely. That's why we're talking about it here today. Now, this time last year, we both sat on this couch, Andre included, and we had the same discussion. Now, it was a huge topic then. It still is today, and I love seeing how many people are here because this means something to you as well. So, Abdullah, can you tell me, it's been a year, what has changed? Has anything changed in the past year?
Let me start with the bad news, and I'll end with the good news.
Okay.
All right. So the not so good news is that, as I said, 1 in 10 cafes have closed since. Profitability is down from over 3% to under 2.4%. And the gap is still there. The good news is prices have moved by at least $1. Melbourne, I was pleasantly surprised this morning. Most of the coffees were $5.86, even $7, which is great. Sydney's a bit behind. We still see 450s and 5s, but it's moving. The last quarterly inflation report, while no one likes inflation, 15% of that was attributed. There was a 15% jump in coffee and tea. So prices, I think, have moved by anywhere from 80 cents to $1, which is great. The other thing is, overall, spending has held up. Most cafes that have raised their prices, and we'll get to hear from Matt, they haven't seen such a big pushback. Also, signature beverages, matcha, cold drinks are coming in and people are paying $9, $10 for it. There's a lot of innovation. A lot of people are trying to solve this in multiple ways, whether it's automation, pre-batching, all these things. So there's a lot of good things to look forward. And also, I think the biggest thing is the industry has responded. A lot of roasters, multi-sites are putting their prices up. They're talking about it. Flagships are sitting at $6.57. So they're the right signals. Yeah. And the media has also written a lot about it in a friendly way, which is really helpful.
Yeah. Okay, so some positive steps there. So Lucy, I'd love to know, what's your conversations been like with producers in particular about this subject?
Well, a lot of producers are actually not really that interested in talking directly about the cup price. What they're more concerned about is actually, what I want to say is like the coffee value distribution gap, more like that. So where is the money actually going? And that's the bit that they're actually really concerned about. I think it's really interesting to talk about the sort of the history of pricing, and particularly pricing down the chain in the farmers' hands. So today, a producer will get around about 10 cents of a US dollar for the coffee, like of the end up price, right? Back in the 40s, they used to get somewhere between 30 and 40 cents per dollar. So huge shifts have happened in that time to now change the fact that we've got, about 60% of the coffee producers out there in the world are smallholders who are, many of them, living below income, below a living income. So, it's a fundamental problem that we really need to try and resolve. And so their concern is, why am I not getting more money? And some of the conversations I've had with some producers have been things like, wow, you're selling that coffee for that amount of money, how come I'm not getting any of it, right? And we can absolutely dig deeper into the reasons why and all of that sort of thing, but that is the critical thing that people are asking is, why don't I get any of that?
And what do you tell them, Lucy?
Well, I tell them that it is a very, very complex issue. There are so many layers to this.
So what do you think are some of the structural factors in the current global market that need to help close this gap? What are they? Are there some practical things you think, or economical things that need to happen in order for that gap to close?
That's a big can of worms.
We have half an hour.
We do. We have half an hour. Okay, look, I think let's have a look at what the issue actually is. And the issue is actually that we've got a power imbalance, okay? So on our side, the roasting side of things, we've got some major players who are selling to many, many, many roasters. Those major players are also purchasing, on the other side of things, in the global south, they're purchasing from many, many, many small producers. Now, we spoke about being around about 60% of smallholder producers, so we've got lots of tiny little producers who have got no power and no say, because we've got these large companies who are purchasing all of their coffee. These guys are living below, below a living income. They're in poverty. So a lot of them need to sell fast. They need to sell to whoever it's going to give them money. They need to get that coffee out the door as soon as possible, put food on their table, right? The big guys who are purchasing from them, they know that. So what they're doing is, not paying as much as potentially it's worth, the value, right? Then we've got those big sellers who are selling onto the roasters onto the cafes, and cafes onto the consumer. And when we talk about the coffee value gap, the consumer doesn't understand all of these different actors in that chain, and the critical issue being that structural imbalance and that power imbalance.
Wow. Okay, that's going to take a while to unpack, but in terms of what needs to change, what can we do, do you think, from an industry point of view? Is there reform? Is there some actual shifts and some, structural changes you think the industry can play a role?
Look, there is, but it's going to take a lot of effort, and it's going to be a collaborative effort as well. There's plenty of information and research about how to fix this, but the hard truth is that these big players would have to lose a lot of their power.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So things that we have seen that do work is things like cooperatives. So smaller producers getting together and creating their own cooperative, therefore giving themselves more say and more traceability. And traceability is another one that we actually need to understand. A lot of producers, little tiny guys, don't know where their coffee goes. They don't know how much it gets sold for. They don't know anything beyond the person they've just sold it to. Giving those people knowledge and power will help improve that gap.
Yes.
So that's where cooperatives can really come in, because cooperatives then work towards making sure that that information is passed on. Okay. Other things that we can do, so we've all seen various certificates, sustainability, things like that. We've been doing those for years. They haven't fixed the problem. So that is not the solution. And the solution isn't getting necessarily customers to pay more at the cafe. It's how do we get that money back is the critical issue. Now, if we look at how we purchase coffee as a roaster, so people like me, what we need to do is bake into all of our purchases, ensuring that every producer that we purchase from is at least receiving a living income, if not more. And that is a critical step that we would need to see the Nescafes, JDEs, Starbucks, etc. of the world do in order to truly make an improvement. Smaller roasters, yeah, sure, great, fantastic, but it doesn't shift the dial.
Okay, interesting. A lot of work here needs to be done. I'm going to just ask Andre a few questions now. Now, Andre, given your close relationship with Brazilian producers in particular, I'd love just to get your thoughts on what your sentiment is and their experience in understanding of this gap in particular. What's the conversation like at Origin for you?
Yeah, it's great. Thank you, Lucy, Abdullah. Just painting that picture. It makes us. Makes our job of tackling that topic much easier. And I think the first thing about the coffee industry, which is a beautiful industry, is that we not many commodities you're able to buy from a particular farmer and know the name and the location you buy from. So it'll be pretty hard for a bakery to know where the wheat is coming from. It's hard for a candy factory where the sugar is coming from. The coffee is amazing in that sense. You can actually connect, and it doesn't matter how big you are. So I think there's something unique about this industry that we can make a lot of difference, no matter the size you are. So on the farmer side of things, I think the sentiment, there's definitely this value gap that for farmers is translated in terms of risk in the supply chain. So I think they look at the supply chain and obviously they're not concerned about how much money the cafe is making at the end of that supply chain. They know that everyone needs to make money along the supply chain. What they concern is the way they farm or the challenges they're going through now are very different to the ones that they used to go 50 years ago, right? The challenges with climate has put a big burden and a lot of uncertainty in terms of outputs, in terms of how much money they have to reinvest into the farm. So it's not only getting more money or being paid better to put money in their pockets. They want to reinvest into the land. That's probably most of the money that where they're going to deploy. So talking to the farmers, so for us, having farmers coming to MICE every year is just amazing because they can get the real pulse directly from the market, and you guys also have the opportunity to have a chat with them and hear directly from them what's going on. But farmers now, they need to invest in irrigation because the rainfall is not as consistent as it used to be. So last year, Brazil, we had 3 degrees above average during, a summer, 3 degrees above average. And what that does to the crops is that they start aborting all the buds, all the flowers. So the flowers don't become buds because it's too hot. So the plant decides to abort instead of trying to grow that cherry. So there's less water, there's more uncertainty in terms of productivity. And then they have to invest. For example, one of the farmers told me yesterday, because we are having a pretty good rain season now, like in Brazil, just leading up to the harvest in a couple of months, which is great. So cherries are looking awesome, growing, but it's imposing another challenge because it's too wet. So now they're investing in drone spraying instead of like normal tractors or trucks to spray the crops to prevent, leaf rust. And all those things are much more expensive than, usual in traditional farming. So I think for farmers, the topic is more how much risk are we bearing, and I think every cafe here, owner here, should look back to the supply chain and understand that our businesses depend on how much coffee we're able to produce. Without coffee, there's no business for us, right? And I think that's a bit of the concern and the sentiment from the farmers to be part of roasters and cafes sharing a little bit of that load of the risk and having that money reinvested into the supply chain so we can continue get coffee every year. Roasters like Lucy and Abdullah, they might notice like every year coffee's different. Coffee's not something that we pull out of the shelf and it's the same every year. We're seeing challenges more and more frequently as well. So for them, the gap is more of a risk sharing than actually the dollars. But obviously that brings up the value of the product we sell. And it gives us a bit more work and more complexity to deal with.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Thank you for that advice. It's so interesting to hear your insights there straight from origin. So it's an interesting time, and we know prices are going up for everyone. So for a supplier and an importer like yourself, how have you been able to navigate those costs, Andre, from a business point of view?
Yeah, I think the first thing is transparency. I think the only way to navigate times like this is through transparency. Communication has been the kind of a buzzword in the industry at the moment because for a long time we used to run our own businesses as an island. We wouldn't communicate with our suppliers what the forecast was for the following year or what we're going to sell. Cafes wouldn't tell roasters that their coffee usage has gone up 10%, and then they picking up a new, supplying to a new office, and then their sales going up. The same thing would sort of go down the supply chain. So we wouldn't hear from roasters until they needed another 20 tons in 3 months. Yeah. And then we can't turn around. So I think the only way to go through these difficult times is through communication. And this communication has been passed on to farmers. Because they also struggling in funding their activity as well. Yeah. Because price is so expensive now. Obviously, they hit a ceiling with the local banks, so they want from us importers a forecast of sales to go back to their banks and say, look, I've got contracts, and I need such and such money to pay the for inputs, for example. Yeah. If I'm not able to provide them, a forecast of what we're planning for next year, it's impossible for them. Yeah. So it's definitely, I would say, transparency is key now.
And you've had that transparency with your customers at Origin, but on the other end, for roasters in particular, what's that conversation been like, given transparency is so important? Yeah,
good point. And I think I'm very positive because I see a lot of shift from last year.
Good, okay.
Personally. Yeah. I do see a lot of roasters last year. I kind of felt there was a lot of fear in the room. People didn't know what was going to happen. No one knew how we're going to sell coffee at 400 cents per pound. but we all got through it.
did.
We adapt. And we've seen very positive signs from our clients. Conversations like Andre, the other day I was talking to a coffee roaster, and he said, look, I was very scared to have a conversation with my accounts. I had all the charts you sent me. I had all the topics I had to touch, the information I needed to rebut any pushback from the cafes. And you know what? I'm very surprised because most of our clients, that's what we're hearing from them. They haven't lost any account. And just because they understand and they could work with the cafes, like with efficiency, gains that you could have, ways to sell the increase in cups to cover, the green increase. It's completely doable. Working on how much value they're delivering to customers, it's a big thing. So I'm more positive than last year. So I think future is looking good. Okay. I think yeah.
Good signs for everybody here, and to bring Matt into the conversation as well. Welcome, Matt, to the chat. But
thank you very much.
From a cafe owner perspective yourself, what has your relationship been like with this conversation to your customers, if at all? How have you navigated that?
Yeah, great question. This has been going on for a long time, and I think the biggest problem is that we've just taken so long to put our prices up. And a lot of all this stuff we're talking about right now, it's such high level, such interesting geopolitical stuff, and I think the average punter probably doesn't know this, and they'll never understand this. And you might ask the question whether or not they actually care. We don't know. I think maybe it's even a stretch what the general customer really particular wants their cafe that they go to really be successful, let alone the producers. I'm not saying that's how it should be, but it might be just the way that it is. We hopefully want to change that. That's the aim, but that's sort of what we're dealing with, I think. But how we've sort of managed it is, look, we have to be bold here. We've had to put our prices up. It is hard. It's a scary thing to do because you're worried about losing your customers. But I'll tell you what, it's a lot better to remain profitable and sustainable than it is to keep everybody happy.
So when was that moment for you, Matt? When did you make the call to put prices up?
Well, we're very lucky. We deal with a very good roaster, Single O, and I've been sort of making the point to a lot of people that, when your suppliers, particularly your coffee roasters, when they put their prices up on you, don't think of them. They're not your enemy. They actually are trying to help you. Single O had a great initiative of rising cup prices. They encouraged me to do that and put that fear away. I had someone backing me and gave us confidence that everything will be okay. We listened to that advice and we took it, and I tell you what, it actually just turned out to be okay. We didn't really lose any business, and I think we're more profitable than we were before.
Okay, that's fantastic. And what does that look like for your customers right now in terms of price point? Can you give us a little insight of what's a flat white currently? What's a standard?
We're sort of heading close to that $6 mark, which we're sitting here on stage talking about all these big things we've done, and we're still only talking about $6. We're still very, very early days here, but it's a big improvement. I remember the days when it was people would laugh at you if you were over $3.50.
That's right. I think last year we had a bit of peer pressure on the stage where we actually forced someone to put their prices up. So here's a question for the audience. So who's thinking about raising their prices? They're on the fence, they're not sure. We've got a few hands, okay? This could be the conversation you need to hear. Who has put prices up this year? Raise your hands. All right, that's impressive, okay. And I think that's the positivity we're hearing about. So I think what maybe the shift in the last year is the fear factor's been removed, because the more and more people who are doing it, the less fear that we have that this is a decision that collectively is for the better. So it's really interesting to hear what you've been doing there, Matt.
Thank you very much.
And well done.
Thank you. And I just think, if you haven't ever spoken to your biggest competitor or your neighbour that's doing the same thing as you, I think now's the time to go and speak to them.
Yep.
You don't have to be friends with them, but you could just at least encourage them to put their price up as well. Yep. It's not a race to the bottom. I think that if everyone does it, it'll be better for everyone. So don't be afraid to make that connection and have that conversation.
And Matt, in particular, were you ever concerned about your competitors, those around you and what they were doing? How was that conversation for you?
Of course, and we do. Unfortunately, we have some competitors that haven't done the same thing. They've stayed the same. And, you know, I've seen some of our customers go over to our competitors and pay a lower price. I would beg to differ. I don't think that means they've won. I think they've just got a customer at a lower price. So I'd probably prefer to have less customers paying a premium. I think that's more of a sustainable model. And of course, I understand the hesitation. You're worried about some of your best customers that have been coming in every day and you love seeing them, and all of a sudden you see them go somewhere else. It's heartbreaking, but we have to sort of really think about everything we're talking up here from your own particular self-interest, your own profits, but along the line, just like Lucy's talking about and Andre here, about the producers and all those people behind the roasters and everyone involved. It's a responsibility that we've got. We're lucky that we're in a position that we can be in business, and coffee is, you know, arriving, but we have to make sure that keeps on happening.
Yeah. And Matt, pricing's one thing, but education's another. And I'd love just to hear your thoughts on how you've communicated to customers about producers, you know, the people that make their very cup of coffee every day. Do they care? Is there interest? What's that conversation been like?
Do they care? I'm not sure. I think that's what we're all trying to find out here. The true test will be, you know, if we use that as the selling point and it works, then we'll know people care. Yeah. But it's not the only thing. There's a lot of other, you know, things we need to be talking about. I think the other thing is, you know, we're all sitting here on stage and we've got this whole exhibition and this whole seminar about price rises, and we're talking about a couple of cents here every year or a dollar here or there. I don't think the beer companies or the petrol companies are all getting together and, you know, putting up apology letters on Instagram about how their prices are going up. They just go ahead and do it. And I think that's what we need to remember. It's not that difficult. Prices go up on everything. Your iPhone's gone up in price, your petrol's gone up in price, your dry cleaning, everything's gone up in price. Coffee is no different. Just keep moving it up.
Well said, Matt. And to the rest of the group, maybe just to open it up for discussion. So we've talked about the different layers. There's a lot of complexities in this conversation, but who has the greatest responsibility, really, to close this gap? Is it our industry leaders? Is it the retailers? Is it the consumers? How do we band together? Is it one sector, or is it a collective?
I'll jump in on this
Jump
one.
in, Lucy.
I think, to be honest, it is collective. It has to be from every actor within the chain in order to close the gap. You know, consumers, maybe yes they do, or maybe they don't care about what's happening at the end of the day. I think, you know, most consumers can understand like the inputs that a producer might need to have, so fertilizer and, you know, labour and all of those kind of things. That makes sense. If you ever grew a carrot or something in your backyard, you understand that there's a labour aspect, and, you know, that there are inputs that need to go into the farm. They don't understand all the rest of the pricing, so that transparency is something that we need to try and figure out how to open up. But in order to truly close the gap, or like ensure even distribution perhaps, or more fair distribution would be a better way to put it. It needs to take the importers, the roasters, the cafes, the consumers, the exporters, all of the actors. Yeah.
Abdullah.
Yeah, great points by Lucy. And I think there's two ends of the chain, right? So Andre and Lucy were talking about the producers, which we all care about. Without them, we have no coffee. And on the front end, you have the cafes. Without them, we don't have the Australian cafe culture. And I think we all have a role to play. I do think roasters have a really important role, because education does go a long way. And I think the first group to educate is actually the cafe owners, not the consumers first, because Australian cafe owners are also very unique. Like Lucy was saying, we have 60% of producers are smallholders. Using that terminology, 80 to 85% of Australian cafes are smallholders or independents. It's an anomaly in the world stage. It's unique. It should be world heritaged, right? To protect that, they need, like Matt was saying, last year there was a lot of fear, not understanding your cost base, not understanding the gap between a coffee in the UK versus in Australia. So educating them goes a long way. And I think consumers probably don't care a lot of them, of the reasons, but I do think Australian consumers care a lot about coffee.
Yes.
It's a reason it gets people really riled up, right? And I don't think anyone likes prices going up,
Yeah.
but it's such a part of the daily routine. I was just doing a thought experiment, like in my suburb where I live in Sydney. If cafes disappeared, it will really change what the suburb looked like.
Yeah.
And I was doing the same thing here, just going around Melbourne. It'll really change what the suburb looked around. And I think we did a national survey, and we found a few things. One is most Australians think coffee around the world costs about $5.50, the same as in Australia. When we told them what the price was, willingness to pay increased by 30%.
Yeah.
And coffee is a very, very core part of people's daily life. So I do think we all have a bit to do. I do think while the consumers don't care about the reasons, they don't want to know, like they're making so many decisions, they don't want to know what's happening here and so forth, but they do care about that cafe or that coffee disappearing, right? And I am positive because I think there's a lot happening, and I think we need to do a lot more on both ends, right? Around, but I believe that if the front end, and it's not just about price of the flat white or the espresso is one thing. Part of it is different beverages, right? Part of this is innovation, part of this is automation, part of this is cafe owner education, which we're doing here. So I think it's a collective, it's multi-pronged, and part of it is, I think, community in general, and media, and anyone that has a role to play.
Yeah, well said, Abdul. Andre?
Yeah, I definitely agree. It's a collective solution for this for the whole supply chain, and it works both ways. I think that's totally right. I think farmers need to be also educated how coffee is distributed and how it's consumed. Because even at the farm level, they're producing coffees based on what a lot of times, and that comes a lot from the Australian market, the bar is really high here. It's not any coffee that we take on. And it needs to be, this farmer processing that coffee needs to be educated, because they need to know how that coffee is going to be brewed, how that consumer is expecting that coffee to taste like. So that will define how they're going to, how much money, effort, energy they're going to put in certain types of coffees. But I would say that cafes might have the privilege to maybe embody that sentiment from the whole industry. So I think it is a collective, and we need someone to represent us, and we need cafes to engage with the roasters. We need roasters to push us, green bean suppliers. We need to bring producers to the conversation and package and deliver a message to the consumers that I'm pretty sure anyone that we start talking about coffee value, they totally understand. When we start talking about how many days it takes to dry a coffee batch, how many years it takes for a plant to start producing, what the weather events they need to kind of go through to get their final cup, that if the barista screws up, it's not good. So when we taste a nice cup of coffee, it is amazing. It's a miracle, because there were a lot of steps that could have gone wrong. So I think cafes have a great opportunity. And I mean, we should be supporting you guys.
Okay, Matt, how does that sit with you? How are you feeling the pressure?
Sounds like the cafe owners here have a lot of responsibility, but we can take a lot of lessons from these two up here, as well as all three of us. But of the why, the reason behind all this sort of stuff, and I think to make that actionable, I think there needs to be a bit of a mentality shift in the cafe owners. Self-worth. This doesn't have to be a labor of love. This doesn't have to be a vocation. This can be a real business. You can make a life out of this. You can have a good life. You can, achieve any dreams that you like. But it all starts with having that sort of self-worth. You're all very deserving of a successful life with if you're sitting here, you've probably gone through the worst times. You've been through COVID. You've probably been through. You've been hit in the head with so many, troubles. It never ends. But you're still here, and you're listening to us speak about and getting advice. It can only show, how well you're thinking and how successful you are. So just remember, you just got to make some good decisions here with everything you've learnt, and it's our responsibility by the sounds of it. So let's put these prices up.
No pressure. And on that, what do you think prices will go to this year? What's a prediction? What do you reckon we're going to see?
Ask the pricing man over here.
All right, start with Abdullah. Where is it going to go this year?
Again, I think currently we're saying $5.50 for small. I think that's going to go towards the 6 mark. There's a lot of flagships already sitting below, above that. And I think we did a study around it using a very smart way of looking at, very scientific way of looking at this. And we found that under $4.50, people start questioning currently your quality. If you're sitting under $4.50 or thereabouts, people are like, something's wrong. Once you start going over 6 currently, people pay attention, and over 7, you're going to start losing a lot of people. Now, we think they'll shift about 50 cents to $1 each year. And we think price is one thing, and we want that gap closed. I think the other things are that innovation. Other thing is focusing on value. Like cafe owners are, I think just like producers are heroes, cafe owners are heroes. They take a lot of risk.
Yes.
And barista is a hero, but cafe owners are taking that risk. We have to focus on hospitality. Coffee is a product, but it's in the context of the hospitality, getting the product right, getting the service right, and backing themselves. Having this mindset that it's not just about volume, right? You can have 10% less customers, but be twice as profitable. So we think it's going to move another 50 cents to $1. We see a big opportunity for signature drinks and other beverages which don't have this price anchoring. People are happy to pay $9, $10, $11, $12 for it. So I think there are some challenges, but there's also a lot of positives to look forward to.
Okay, that's encouraging. Lucy, from your perspective in particular, from pricing that you're involved in the actual purchasing of green beans. So what are you factoring for the pricing structure this year? What do you think is going to land in terms of pricing? And then what you're seeing from a cafe point of view, we talk about the increases from a small, flat white, but are people also willing to pay for specialty coffee? Are we seeing that Senate Lee?
Absolutely. We're actually pricing quite high. We're pricing around the $7 mark in cafe, in store. And, we're not afraid of doing that and trying to price quite high. I also kind of want to talk a little bit about in the bag price, because there's so many people who are now drinking coffee at home, and that's also a really important part of a lot of cafes, is doing that retail space and a retail shelf. So ensuring that we're pricing correctly, I think is a really critical point on that. We sell across a whole bunch of different multiple channels, and I can see that potentially we'll do another price increase across both in-bag and cup, but we have pretty much stabilised. We went quite aggressively, quite quickly, and I think it's really important that cafes and retailers and all of that, just not afraid to put the price up, because people are buying specialty. It's just how they're buying it is a little bit different sometimes. Yeah.
Interesting. Awesome. Yeah. Andre, did you want to comment?
Yeah, so obviously we don't see much of the end price of coffee cups, but from a consumer perspective. But we are seeing a bit more structure around how roasters plan to pass on increases, instead of just acting out of something or a big change in the market. They are structuring regular increases to their wholesale prices, which is very healthy. We're seeing a lot of roasters losing opportunity during COVID. They had massive cost increases. But now, with our clients, we're seeing anything between 10 to 15% increase from this year, and they already got increases lined up for the next year to kind of make up for those increases in packaging, in rent, in everything else that goes up every financial year.
Yeah. Everything's going up. We know this. And maybe just in the interest of time, one last question for you all. Let's picture the industry 10 years from now. What does this value gap look like? What does it mean back at origin from our producers? And what do you think the cafe sector is going to look like? Let's think big picture. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Matt, to kick it off.
I think if we keep going on this trajectory and keep having these conversations and we all sort of move with this rising tide, I think the industry is going to be better than it ever has been. I think it's going to be a whole new industry. I think it's going to keep the people in the industry. It's going to bring more talent. And that's, again, when profit isn't just a self-interest thing, it's just to keep everything alive and keep people in this industry as well. So I'm very excited for the future, personally. Maybe that's a bit optimistic, I don't know. But I think it's going to be a good time.
Thanks, Matt. Andre?
Yeah, well, I agree. I'm also pretty excited with the future. I think what we're creating here in Australia is a way to give access to these producers. You don't need to be a big producer to have access to international market, and that's a big change for a farmer, especially in the coffee industry, accessing directly. And when I say directly, is having transparency where your coffee is going, who's buying your coffee, and having the chance to have a say over conversations about volumes or how much coffee you want to sell, or what roaster's going to use your coffee. That access really transforms, from the gate in the operation. So I see farmers thriving, and they pretty keen to offer more and more to coffee roasters and cafes in terms of traceability, in terms of how ethical and just how much work and effort that goes into the activity. So I think I'm super positive.
Good. Let's keep that positivity. Lucy?
Okay, well, maybe I'm a little bit more pessimistic, but I actually think that as it gets more and more challenging for coffee to be actually grown and produced, it will become more of a sort of niche market. Like before it became all commercialized and commodity and all that sort of stuff, coffee was like an elite drink. It was something that only a few people would drink, and they would pay high prices for it, and I think we'll kind of see the return back to that, to be honest. Yeah.
No, great point.
Some great points. I do think when you're looking 10 years in the future, there's choices, right?
Yes.
So there's a future which is reasonably positive, and then there's a future where there's a lot of challenges. Climate change does continue to be a huge challenge. And without coffee at origin, we're going to be drinking a lot of synthetic coffee, which is a thing, and it's growing. I think the quality of coffee also gets affected. I do think I am bullish and positive on the cafe front, because I think there's a lot of experimentation. Cafe owners who are amazing heroes, they are getting better at thinking through what they do, moving from volume to this idea of value, paying more attention to profitability. We also have consumer trends, right? So will flat white be the key drink 10 years from now? I don't know. If you're interested, I think inflation basis, you're looking at an $8 sort of flat white. But I think you're going to have cold beverages. You're going to have other signature drinks. I do hope that our profitability at a cafe level goes from the 3% to 8%, which is a global standard. I do think some of the points that I mentioned, that as roasting community, while we compete, we become more mature in price guidance and value preservation. And more of that is shared towards the producers, because they're really important at the start of that value chain. Without coffee, without beautiful coffee, without delicious coffee and the people that grow it, there's no coffee. And without the cafes, the consumer, like even the home trend, which is huge, people are trying to replicate the cafe.
Yes.
Right? So I think I want to believe a future that we can create. It's not going to happen if we work hard, which is very positive, but it's going to need a lot of active investment in various parts of the value chain.
Well said. And thank you so much to each of you for sharing such amazing insights. This is a subject that we could talk about for a very long time, and I'd love to say this time next year we come back for part 3 of this. Seems to be an annual tradition, but it's because we put expectations that we make commitments to move prices, to commit to putting our own coffee prices up, and it can make an impact. So I think with the insights we've heard today, hopefully it's inspired you with your choices and given us insights to what we can be thinking about back at origin, but also the conversations we can have with our own customers customers. So thank you so much to each of you. Please join me in thanking Matt Gillard, to Andre Selgar, Lucy Ward, Abdullah Ramey. Thank you very much for your time and insights today. Thank you.